have your attention, please?
You're listening to Tales from the Tannoy with Elinor Hamilton.
I'm Elinor Hamilton, and my voice is heard by scores of commuters every day because on London Underground platforms at least, I never shut up.
The next train to arrive alongside Platform 2 will be an Edgware Road service.
My husband Phil works alongside me too.
Mind the gap.
But sadly, he passed away in 2016. Because his recordings still exist though, we're still able to work together, which is just wonderful, but not quite the same as it used to be. Our story's told in episode 1, but there are so many different life stories behind those recorded voices that accompany your daily life on buses, TV adverts, smartphones and computers that I want to share as many as possible. If you've ever listened to the radio, you've probably heard this voice pop up to tell you the name of the station after every bloody song.
Play Greatest Hits Radio. Catch the greatest hits on Greatest Hits Radio.
He's paid to sound super cool and aspirational. He's a guy that other guys want to sound just like. But the man behind the voice hasn't always lived the dream. In fact, he struggled with mental health nightmares and has been through a number of marriages. Rik Scott, welcome. Do you want to tell us about the journey that eventually led to you marrying for a fourth time?
Yeah, well, people often say, do you like the taste of wedding cake? And, well, yeah, I do actually. But, that's...
My husband used to call it that great libido killer.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it was only recently I started looking into the family tree, and I thought, I'm sure they haven't had boring lives, but most of my relatives appear to have just, been married once and all that kind of stuff, and nothing seems to happen. And I thought, I really need actually to write this down. I don't want to write a biography. I'm not important or anything like that, but I just wanted to, so that someone in the future goes, blimey, what happened here? What was going on with this bloke,
Okay, so it's not a family thing?
Oh, no, not in the slightest. I was happily married, got married in 1994. I remember that because it was the World Cup, and a lot of things in my life focus around football. Yeah, and very happy, and everything was, as far as I was concerned, everything was cool, and I thought that she was fine, and we had a really happy life. We had a son. Mm-hmm. And that was going very well. You know yourself, the nomadic lifestyle of a radio presenter, you're around the country a lot, or at least you were back then, when it was rather like being a footballer, because, you would move from station to station. And these days that doesn't seem to happen because, the stations literally aren't there anymore. So my son was born in Canterbury when I was at Invicta in Kent. And, 2 years there. I normally did 2 years at each station, and it kind of worked out that way. And I moved then to Southern in Portslade, which was my hometown station. So I always wanted to be on that station, And then 2 years, it was 2 years again, I got another offer because my then boss at Southern had moved to Power in Hampshire. And he said, would you like to come down? Because the drive show's going, and also I'm looking for an assistant. I thought, wow, this is going to be a great gig. I thought, yes, this is an opportunity. And the person that I was with suddenly was very reluctant about moving. And I thought, this is a bit weird. It wasn't like her because we'd kind of moved around a lot. And, we were happy here because, our families were around and all the rest of it. But she was a bit reticent. And it took a lot of persuading for her to join me down there. I was living in Diggs for a while. Then one day, have you ever seen Private Parts with Howard Stern?
I don't think I have, no.
There's a moment in that movie where Howard is called on air by his wife, and his wife rings and says, I'm pregnant.
Wow.
He gets all excited, and of course Howard Stern being Howard Stern, he takes the call live on air. And, it's like,
oh, God.
Worries about the consequences later, and, really doesn't care if he gets fired or whatever, and really doesn't care about how his wife feels. I took that very same call from my then wife, and I'm pregnant. And I was like, oh my God, but this was obviously off air. I didn't put her on air,
Yeah.
And I remember this so vividly because we had a film crew in at the time, and they were videoing something. And they needed me to talk to camera. And I hate that kind of stuff. I've always been audio only and never appear in front of a camera, you know. And so I kept fluffing my lines constantly. At the end of it, they said, Rik, do you want to tell us why you've been fluffing your lines so much? I said, yeah, it's because my wife's just called and I'm going to be a dad again. And so it was incredible, you know, and I kept the video because they sent it to me, said, oh, you know, blah, 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 blah. That's going to be wonderful. And anyway, so all happened and everything was great. But then I want a divorce. Okay, right. Okay, let's, you know, it was there, you know, but it was very sad, obviously. So obviously, you know, the years started rolling by and I was looking after my son at weekends. He'd come to stay. And unfortunately, my ex wasn't so keen on allowing my daughter to come. And this was sort of, it happened very rarely that, oh, you know, yeah, she can come down and see you this weekend kind of thing. You know, you can pick her up. And
how old was she when your wife said she wanted the divorce?
So she was very young. She was about 6 months.
Right, okay.
You know, they always say out of the mouths of babes. Something was said by someone.
Right.
I thought, well, this can't be right. And through the grapevine, I'd heard that someone else had been told to be called Daddy by my daughter. And so I thought, well, I mean, this is a bit weird, you know, what's going on? And once again, football pops up because Power FM at that time had a show, the Southampton football show. Southampton had made it to the FA Cup final. Right. And so they were broadcasting from Red Dragon FM in Cardiff on that morning. And I did Saturday breakfast as well as my drive show during the week. So I had to drive down to Cardiff and we were going to go and watch the game afterwards, you know. That was all planned. We were going to go down there on the Friday. And on the Thursday, I spoke to my ex and found out that actually, I'm sorry, but, you know, she's not your daughter.
Wow.
And, well, of course, I just, you know, my world fell apart. The Friday was very interesting because I had to do a show, a normal drive show. I then had to drive from Southampton to Cardiff, you know, pretend that everything's normal and all the rest of it. Yeah. Do the breakfast show from a studio that I'd never been in before in my life. So that was
everything's back to front as well.
Totally new equipment. Had no idea what I was working. There's a photo of me where I'm just staring into space. And I know what I'm thinking. No one else does, obviously. But I was just thinking, my God, let me out of here. Come on, 10 o'clock. You know how you kind of will shows to end sometimes, you know.
Yeah. And
I said, look, I'm sorry, I can't stay around. And I'd still held off. I still bottled all this up. I got in the car and just, you know, that was it. Floodgates, the whole works. Managed to get back to home. Yeah. And shut my curtains, and that was it. Bang, you know. It was literally like an explosion that got off in my head, and it was just horrible. Absolutely horrible. The DNA results came through quite quickly, because obviously, you know, I wanted confirmation.
Of course, yeah.
My ex obviously now wanted confirmation as well. And and so officially there it was in black and white. Yeah. That I wasn't this girl's father. And yeah, it was horrible.
So what went through your head when all of this was happening? I mean, I know when we're in emotional chaos, we don't always have a linear pattern of thought. It's just kind of a mishmash. But do you remember any overriding feeling that you had when those thoughts were coming through?
It was just darkness. It was, I don't want to be seen. I don't want to be heard. I don't want to connect with anybody. One person did connect, and I wanted her to, and she's one of my best friends. So she came round, and literally, I remember opening the curtains and say,
Really?
right, come on, we're going to get you out. I don't know how many days this was after I got back home, but there was a hotel that I know she's still a member of the gym there, and she literally said, right, get your trunks or whatever, your Speedos, and we're going to go and sit in the jacuzzi for however long you want, and we'll just sit and chat,
Yeah, and no one will see you crying.
Yeah.
Because it's wet anyway.
That's right. Precisely.
Hey, we've all done it.
Yeah. So, that was, she was a little miracle. She really was, And I had a relationship going. Yeah, I had a relationship going at the time as well with someone else, but it was obviously it was an absolute mess,
Yeah. Well, I mean, it must have been very hard for her to cope with that as well and cope with you. And if it was a fairly new relationship, she was probably already kind of understanding that she'd have to deal with a partner with 2 children who weren't hers.
Exactly.
And then to find out that one isn't, it could be the nail in a coffin of any relationship, really, if you're not coping with it, which, why would you? The whole thing just sounds like a total nightmare.
And of course, later on, Jeremy Kyle made made a show out of this kind of stuff.
Yeah, but you've got all your teeth, so you wouldn't have been able to go on.
And I don't wear trackies like those lads do. So it does actually happen to other people, other than those that appear on or used to appear on Jeremy Kyle's show.
Oh, it does. I mean, marriages and my grandfather was a real rogue, but he was terribly well-to-do, but he'd been married 4 times and we always referred to his 4 sons as the 4 sons that we know of, It
sounds very much like a prime minister we know.
Some of these things transcend class and also, you don't have to be Jeremy Kyle material, although you do have tattoos. So, but the...
the
Phil's
tattoos.
View of Phil's view of the Jeremy Kyle show was always you had to have more tattoos than teeth to be on the show.
I know that I'm going to bust the illusion for anyone listening in that we aren't actually in the same room and we're doing this via Skype.
Of course, because we're not allowed to see each other anymore, are we?
Phil would have loved my tats.
You're covered in them head to toe. Well, not head to toe.
No, but what they are, they tell my story.
Right.
Because what we haven't got onto yet, and I'll quickly slip this in, is that from that point, it took about 6 years for the diagnosis to then be diagnosed as bipolar. And this, I'd gone through various stages of doing stupid things, hiding in a wardrobe, thinking that Iraqi troops are outside, about to get me, I shaved my legs, convinced that I was about to take part in a camel racing competition and that I was a jockey. And that's the best bit about the hyper stuff because it's really funny. And
but with every high comes probably with
the highs become exactly self-harming as well, and that's why I've got the tats, because it stops me from self-harming in a visible way so that people can see it, but also actually it is a form of self-harm in that it's hurting, and when I'm having it done, it's really getting rid of kind of like a bit of anger and a bit of pain, and it gets the old endorphins going, and it's a great release.
Because I've always wondered about that, because I know that self-harm, this sounds like an awful thing to say, but it's become a popular way of people didn't seem to do it so much, at least they weren't talking about it when I was a teenager. I know that people did it, but it's now become something that people do talk about a lot. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean it's more prevalent. It just means that people are talking about it, which is a good thing. Yeah. But I've never quite, because I've not done it myself, I don't really understand what it offers you in terms of how it makes you feel when you're hurting.
There's a build-up to what happens. I don't know. It's kind of like, I visualize it almost like a zit that needs bursting.
Yeah.
And there's pressure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
This pressure is building, and then you have to do something to kind of get, just to stop it and to get on the, to get through the other side.
Yeah.
And I'd done lots of work on trying to get through it and trying to see what was what was out there? Hypnotherapy, obviously counselling.
Yeah.
And the one thing that really helped, and this was the life changer for me, there was a program locally, because by this time I'd changed radio stations again, and I'd moved back here, and there was another marriage, I think. And but of course, I was going through. In my head was just turmoil,
Yeah.
And so basically, there was a program within the NHS, and I think it was called Options,
Right.
and this involved traditional counselling with someone there, but also they had a partner. And so you would have the interaction between your counsellor, as it were. And then about sort of 10, 15 minutes before the end of it, then the person would then turn to the other person. You would be shut out of the conversation, and they'd talk about you as if you weren't there.
But you're there, you can hear that conversation?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Luckily, they didn't pick apart my fashion sense or or anything like that. But they said...
That's probably something that no one can help with.
but what they did say, and this is where there was this light bulb moment for me. The person turned around to me and said, "You're grieving." No one had said that to me before. You're grieving. Yeah. You've lost your daughter.
Yeah.
But because I occasionally see my former daughter as well, she's always going to be a part of my life in this bizarre way.
Because she's your son's sister.
She's my son's sister.
Yeah.
So, and she's grown into a lovely young lady. She's doing a really responsible job. She's a fantastic girl. But there it was spelt out for me in black and white. You are grieving, and it's all right, to grieve like this. All right, the person you've lost isn't in a box or anything, but yeah, you've lost them. Yeah. From my point of view, the weird thing as well, because this then goes into what got me through as well, was the lady who took part and saw me through that and said those very words. A couple of weeks later, I'd always been interested in Buddhism. She and I walked into our first Buddhist meeting at exactly the same time. And I said,
"You're kidding."
"Oh, you?" And she said, "Yes, I know you too, but we're not allowed to say why we know each other." All right? So,
of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and we've become firm friends ever since. Good. In fact, she said she's going to lend me her juicer, which is marvellous.
Well, that's the friendship, isn't it?
It is. Isn't it just?
That's amazing. Yeah. And I think that when you've had some kind of mental health problem, because I know I've suffered from depression. I've seen counsellors over and over again over the years.
Yeah.
But to find that the counsellor actually likes to spend time with you, or you've met them outside of the situation that you've originally had to see them in, and find that they think you're all right, is quite nice. It's quite reassuring, because you know that they don't think you're completely mental.
That's right.
Which is
exactly.
Something that we all worry about.
Totally.
Rightly or wrongly. And again, it's something that it's brilliant that we're all talking about mental health and understanding that we all have mental health and ill health at times. But to be able to sort of befriend somebody that works in that area. I've got a friend who's a psychiatrist, and I think, oh, good, she seems to like me. So, it's fine. She doesn't avoid me every time we bump into each other anyway.
Yeah. Or just comes along with a big couch. Says, right, lie down here then.
Don't get me started. I never shut up. So how did it feel when you went to collect your son and saw the girl that was no longer your daughter? You'll have seen her grow up, I suppose.
She is now 20. I think the one thing that has been very important to me is that we all get on.
Yes.
And I could not bear it if there was any friction between us. It was horrible at the time.
Yeah.
God, it was horrible. But I have a lovely friendship with my ex-wife.
Good.
And we don't do as many sort of family get-togethers, the big whole family thing, as we should. We've only done one when my son was 21.
Okay.
And so everyone got together. But I'm good friends with my ex's husband, and he's been her husband now since that time.
Right, and so he is her father, is he?
Yes.
Right, okay.
Yeah. So, we all get on. That for me is the best part about the whole story, because it kind of, it's come full circle. It's wrapped itself.
Yeah, and although you lost a daughter, you've at least allowed yourself to benefit from a different kind of relationship with this girl that you've seen growing up. And by being the kind of guy you are is what's made that happen. I mean, it's such a difficult situation.
No, absolutely not.
It certainly wasn't the girl's fault.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And the lovely thing, from my point of view, where I'm at now in my life, is that I have a stepdaughter now who I have a great relationship with. I've never met her because she lives in Australia, but we video call all the time and message. I'm stepdaddy, and even though she's only about 12 years younger than I am, because there is a slight age difference between me and my wife, but I've got her. I've got 5 grandchildren, step grandchildren, and it's wonderful. Couldn't ask for anything more,
And you have a great relationship with your son as well, don't you? Because
yes.
I know I've seen things posted on Facebook here and there. I mean, obviously we all put our edited highlights of life on Facebook, so we don't always see the arguments and stuff. But
yes, exactly.
You seem to
I mean, he has questionable politics. We don't agree on anything as far as politics go. As far
I've got a feeling you're my side of the fence.
I'm a bit kind of left of centre.
I was going to say you've got a beard and tattoos, so obviously you're a lefty.
And I voted Remain.
Is that even a question?
Yeah. So we come at it from different angles, and also a funny part of the whole thing, aside from the daughter issue, but having someone else raise your son when you're out of when you've been excluded from the family environment. As I've mentioned a couple of times, a bit of a football fan, and I'm a huge Spurs fan.
Right. Well, now we all have our cross to bear, don't we?
Exactly. Now the guy who kind of took my place back then is a massive gooner. So he's an Arsenal fan. And so my son was raised in this house by an Arsenal fan. You cannot imagine the pain that brings you.
I can, because my partner's a Manchester United fan.
Ah, right. There you go.
So I get it.
Okay. I mean, that's...
And he took my son there one Christmas.
Ooh.
To the Theatre of Nightmares. And they had a lovely time. So that's fine.
Well,
but anyway,
I'm okay now because
I understand that Arsenal and Manchester United fans make up, a large proportion of the Tales from the Tannoy audience, so we don't want to alienate them.
Yeah, very sorry.
You're all marvellous.
But my boy's into motor racing now, so
okay,
that's all right. You can enjoy that.
Yeah.
That's good.
I do think it's brilliant when you can have a good relationship with your kids. I mean, an absent dad is only the dad that he's allowed to be. In many ways, I think. Phil always used to say that. And I think as long as you haven't got a bad press, there's no reason why you can't kind of rub along and bring these kids up together. And the worst thing that you can do for a child is to slag off their other parent, I think.
Absolutely.
It's a horrible thing to do because it doesn't gain anything. And as you said, you've kind of got a great relationship with the whole family because of the fact that you've rubbed along together eventually. But I'm sure there will have been pretty dark moments, but their mum is your first wife. Yeah. And then there was what happened next?
What happened next was...
the marriages.
Do we have to talk about this?
I love that line from Pretty Woman where she talks about his wife and his secretary, and she said, and where are they? Shopping together.
Well, interestingly, my second wife She was training to become a Church of England priest. And
Wow.
it didn't quite happen for her at the time, but I understand it has now. And she's now a lay preacher. And actually, she put me in touch with the lady who introduced me to Nichiren Buddhism. So I've got her to thank for that, you know. And she understands now that I was in a bit of a dark place. And as it happens, apparently she was as well. So we've reconciled, and
Good.
that's all good, you know.
So how long were you with the second, I don't want to call her the second wife, you know what I mean, your second wife?
Well, we dated when we were kids. I was working in London. It's my first job in radio was at Radio HMV in Oxford Circus.
Of course,
At the
yeah.
big
That was a big
HMV
deal, wasn't
store.
it? That's where, that was a big training ground for a lot of people.
Yeah. And she was working at the BBC, and so we were commuting up together. And we met at hospital radio. Things happened, but then she was working as a DJ abroad, then came back because of the situation in the Middle East at the time. We got chatting, and we kind of hooked up.
As you do.
Yeah, we were only together for about 3 years.
But it's plenty of time to get married and divorced.
And to fall out again.
It turns out.
And to realise that, you know, she's an ex for a reason.
And then what happened next?
And then kind of the same kind of thing happened, really, and met someone else. And it was at this point that my bipolar really flared big time. I was working in Kent at a group of radio stations there, and I couldn't really cope with it. I was pretty manic. I was gardening at 2:00 in the morning.
Wow.
Really wasn't well. And so they needed to make redundancies, and so I accepted a bit of a payoff, and that was it.
Yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we didn't touch on before, is that when you're in our job, we're usually not protected in any way. We're normally kind of not on, I mean, you may have been on staff, but most of us are self-employed. And if you have to just keep working, don't you?
You do. Yeah, that's right.
Regardless of what is going on in your life.
That's right.
And not only that, but you have to sound cheerful on air, which is very difficult.
Back when I was at Power and the whole thing was, kicking off, the studio actually was quite a sanctuary because, the red light would go on, no one else could get in, and I could sort of, put on a bit of an act. They did the best thing for staff morale ever at Power FM.
Okay.
The managing director was nice, but they made a round of redundancies of that tier of management. And so the MD was fired.
Right.
Freed up her office, so they stuck a pool table in. And that was the best thing ever, because instead of getting us in to do snoop sessions where the boss goes through and just pulls apart everything you say when you're on air, and there's no way you can change it. It's gone.
No,
it's on its way to Mars now,
Yeah.
So instead we played pool till about 15 minutes before I went on air. And that, for me, was just the best. And I thank my then boss, Stuart, because he was just brilliant and really, really knew how to look after me. Didn't need any more money. It didn't need a car. It didn't need, a couple of days off or whatever.
Although those things would not have been unacceptable, I imagine.
No, absolutely. I would have accepted them with open arms. But just allowing me to beat him at pool a couple of times a week was good enough for me.
It's nice when you've got something social that you can do as a team, because especially when you're in a radio station, although it's a great place to work, if you're on air, you're on your own pretty much, unless the news guys come in or whatever. You are kind of keeping the whole show on the road, but doing it all by yourself.
Which is kind of like what you and I do now. The whole isolation thing.
It is.
I look at how I live now, and actually I'm really happy with how I live. I've got my friends. I haven't got a lot of friends, but I've got my friends. But most importantly, I've got my
quality
wife.
friends, I imagine.
Exactly. And I got my dogs, and that's so important to me. And I love what I do. So it's the best thing in the world as far as I'm concerned.
And also, let's not forget that last and definitely not least, you also have your beautiful wife by your side. The final chapter, let's hope, in a fairly long and complicated series. Can you tell me about her? How did you meet?
The final Mrs. Scott.
Is that even your real name?
No.
Right.
But will be for the purposes of this conversation.
Which man uses his real name on the radio? For goodness sake.
For the purposes of this conversation.
I get called Mrs. Sayer and it's like, no. But anyway.
Exactly. The final Mrs. Scott, she was the first person to cut my son's hair as a baby. And she had been my mum's hairdresser for way over 20 years. Previous relationship had broken down. I'd moved into a flat. I thought, okay, nothing's going on, and I'm bored. I'm on my own, and blah blah blah. And a few months had gone by, and so I signed up to. It wasn't eHarmony. It was one of these other ones, Matchcom.
Right. Okay.
And something I looked through. You're like a kid in a candy store because. No, I don't like you. Oh, hello. Yeah. And of course, it registers to the person that you're looking at if you go back. And so they can see that you've looked at their profile.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I didn't recognise this woman. But I thought, oh, God, you're gorgeous. Oh, you're so cute. And I thought, right, okay. And so then this little tick thing comes up or whatever it was, an emoji or something.
Yeah.
And then this message popped up. Hello, Richard. You don't see. That's my real name. Hello, Richard.
Well, I guess that might have been.
Yeah. You don't recognise me, do you? But it's me, your mum's hairdresser, and I just wanted to say, good on you for getting back out there, and And I said, well, you know all about me because you know what women are like.
Of course, I know exactly what we're like.
Talking with the hairdresser and all the rest of it. I said, well, you won't want to come to me with a 10-foot barge pole then, will you? You know I've been ill and all the rest of it. And she said, no, well, that's, it doesn't stop us going out for a coffee. And so we did. Oh. And we went for a coffee along the seafront here. Mm-hmm. And first thing in the morning, about sort of 8:30. And we just didn't stop laughing. And
wonderful.
A couple of weeks later, we were on the ferry over to Ryde for the Isle of Wight Festival. And because initially she said, I don't want anything serious, because she's had exactly the same as what I've had in the past.
Yeah.
To the same amount, actually, as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, you're in good practice now.
Exactly. Yeah.
Probably know what you're doing.
Precisely. And she said, let's just take it easy and have a laugh, and that was it. And then I didn't actually go home after the Isle of Wight Festival. That was it. I stayed here. And,
wow.
Yeah. And, well, we love each other.
And that was a few years ago now, wasn't it?
It was. Yeah.
Wow. Is this your longest surviving marriage so far?
Hang on. Let me work this out. Shut up.
Listen, no, I only say this because we had a party when we got to 8 years because I was the longest lasting Mrs. Phil. So, and surpassed them all.
Well, congratulations. I certainly have no intention of moving on to another, that's for sure.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it.
Or for having...
She sounds like an absolute diamond.
Yeah, or for having... she has to be to put up with me, that's for sure.
Because you've not had any more children since,
No.
have you? That's probably, in many ways, probably a bit easier.
Yes.
If you have a child with every wife,
That's right, yes.
It can get awkward.
Yes. You find yourself having to keep in touch with people. That's, rather just bumping into them.
That's the worst part.
Yeah, exactly.
You've been listening to Tales from the Tannoy with Elinor Hamilton and Rik Scott, with music from Beats Bakery. This podcast was produced by Carl Svensson at Tadar Media.